I remember many years ago I was eating lunch in a diner in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Lots of military bases around there. And we heard this deafening roar from outside the window. And we asked the waitress what it was. And she smiled proudly and said, "That's an F-14, the sound of freedom." So what sounds like freedom and looks like freedom and feels like freedom in this country is more typically bigger cages and longer chains. And what passes for rebellion in America is more usually co-opted, sanitized, and sold back to us as a trend. And this starts very young. Clarence Darrow once said, "Just think of the tragedy of teaching children not to doubt." Well, in a poem, Ani DiFranco gives us one example of teaching children not to doubt. She talks about a test that we typically get, say, in kindergarten, maybe the first grade. And it runs something like this. They show you two squares in a circle. And the inevitable question is, which one doesn't belong? And thus, at the tender age of 5 or 6, we're being taught that different doesn't belong, that different is wrong. And that same child, by the time they graduate high school, will have witnessed roughly 360,000 television commercials. And if they make it all the way to age 70, an increasingly difficult proposition, I might add, they will, on average, have spent 10 of those 70 years watching television. So no wonder we live in a culture that gets sucked in by lines like, "Yes, we can," and "Change, we can believe it." Now, thanks in part to corporate media propaganda, we now exist within a system in which the Department of War could be magically transformed into the Defense Department shortly after World War II. We now exist within a system in which the U.S. can use helicopters named Apache to quell ethnic cleansing. We now exist within a system where more than 1 out of every 100 American adults is in prison, but we live in the land of the free. We exist within a system in which we can carpet bomb civilians from 15,000 feet, call it humanitarianism, and we live in the home of the brave. And we exist within a system in which a war criminal like Henry Kissinger can be awarded a Nobel Peace Prize. Now, this same system allows for free and fair presidential elections every 4 years, open to anyone over the age of 35, who of course praises God and the free market. Or am I being redundant? Who of course recognizes that his or her enemies are evil and that the rest of the world hates us because we're free. And most importantly, these elections are open to anyone capable of raising $500 million. This same electoral system sees third-party candidates routinely barred from public debates or censored by misguided progressives, I might add. Only half the eligible voters will even bother showing up on election day, and when all else fails, you can count on the Supreme Court to set things straight. And I do mean straight. Now, since we've reached the election portion of this presentation tonight, I feel obligated to present a public service announcement. I'm going to provide for you some of the many, many, many reasons why you shouldn't vote for John McCain. Okay? Here we go. So far, he's raised twice as much money as his opponent from Wall Street. He voted for every Iraq War appropriations bill he faced. He refused to be photographed with the mayor of San Francisco for fear it would be misinterpreted that he supports gay marriage. He voted against single-payer health care. He supports the death penalty, the Israeli war machine, and the wall on the U.S.-Mexican border. He voted to confirm Condoleezza Rice as Secretary of State. He voted to reauthorize the Patriot Act. Wait a second. I got it backwards. Those are some of the many, many reasons to not vote for Barack Obama. I get the two of them confused all the time. You can't, my bad. You can't blame me. Now, in 2006, the Democrats regained a majority in Congress. Somebody's getting it here. So how's that working out for you? Asking that question reminds me of something Steve McQueen said in the movie The Magnificent Seven. When asked how things were going, he said, "It's like that fellow who fell off a 10-story building. As he was falling, people on each floor heard him say, 'So far, so good.'" Because after the 2006 election, we were led to believe that the bad times were over and the evil ones had been vanquished. Had a Democratic Senate, Democratic House, and what could be better? Democratic President. Well, if anyone wants to sort of get an idea of what life might be like under total Democratic control, all they would need to do is hark back to the years 1993 and 1994, when a man named William Jefferson Clinton was enjoying the advantage of a democratically controlled Congress. In just 2 years, the liberal Bill Clinton abandoned his pledge to consider offering asylum to Haitian refugees. He backed away from his most high-profile campaign issue, health care, and he reneged on his promise to take a firm stand against the armed forces ban on gays. In those same 2 years, Clinton presided over the invasion of Somalia, which killed some 7,000 to 10,000 civilians. He signed a little something called the North American Free Trade Agreement, aka NAFTA. He raised the Pentagon budget by $25 billion, fired Jocelyn Elders, dumped Lonnie Guinier, ordered the bombing of Iraq and the Balkans, renewed the murderous sanctions on Iraq, ignored genocide in Rwanda, and passed a crime bill that gave us more cops, more prisons, and 58 more offenses punishable by death. All of this happened before Newt Gingrich and the notorious Republican Revolution of late 1994. Perhaps the most astonishing use of the word revolution in the history of the English language. But it makes me wonder why the right wing didn't love this guy. And I haven't even gotten to the environment. During the first 3 years of the Clinton administration, 2 of which he had total Democrat domination, he and his Green buddy Al Gore gave us, among many other things, the passage of the Salvage Logging Rider, the continuation of the use of methyl bromide, the weakening of the Endangered Species Act, the Safe Drinking Water Act, the lowering of grazing fees on land, the subsidizing of Florida's sugar industry, and on and on and on. When they were running for re-election, Clinton and Gore in 1996, David Brower, the former president of the Sierra Club, wrote an op-ed in the LA Times called "Why I Won't Vote for Clinton." And in that piece, he explained that Clinton and Gore had done more damage to the environment in 3 years than Presidents Bush and Reagan had done in 12 years. That's Bush the elder, not Bush the lesser. Now, I could go on for hours about the rest of Bill Clinton's reign, but that's not really my focus tonight. So I'll just touch on his repeal of welfare, the telecommunications bill that further narrowed the already laughable parameters of debate, a little something called the Defense of Marriage Act, and the fact that after 8 years in office with no political price to pay, he still didn't pardon Leonard Peltier. But I just want to offer one more Bill Clinton gem to give you an idea of what life is like when a Democrat is in the White House. The Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Bill, signed into law on April 24, 1996. This was essentially a prequel to the hated Patriot Act. And it contained provisions that Clinton himself admitted make a number of ill-advised changes in our immigration laws having nothing to do with fighting terrorism. This unconstitutional salvo severely restricted habeas corpus and increased the number of federal capital crimes, and the Patriot Act is essentially an extension of its legal foundation. Now, for a little more democratic context, John Kerry, the Democratic candidate in 2004, signed the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Bill in 1996. He wrote parts of the Patriot Bill in 2001, which Hillary voted for in 2001, and both she and Obama voted to reauthorize in 2005. So, hooray, Democrats. Now, with all the inevitable protests coming up during the Republican National Conventions, I can't help but wonder, where was all the outrage when Bill Clinton was in office? Where was the outrage when he ordered 78 days of bombing over Yugoslavia in 1999, including the use of depleted uranium, which continues to poison that landscape to this day? And his Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, at the time asked, what's the point of having this magnificent military if we never use it? Where were the simplistic Nazi references when Clinton blew up a Sudanese pharmaceutical plant to distract us from Monica Lewinsky's cigar fetish? Where were the Hitler mustaches when Clinton bombed Iraq in response to an alleged assassination plot against Bush the elder, and in the process killed Lila Attar, Iraq's leading and best-known female artist? I say if we want to provoke genuine change, we need to remember that the term anti-war doesn't just mean anti-this war, and it definitely doesn't just mean anti-Republican. I think it's dangerous to confuse the idea of democracy with elections. Just because you have elections doesn't mean you have a democracy. Arundhati Roy said that. If voting changed anything, they'd make it illegal. Emma Goldman said that. The next time someone tells you America has a two-party system, I suggest you demand a recount. I said that. In 2004, 65% of the congressional races were uncontested, and 58% of incumbent senators ran unopposed. Overall, the candidate that raised the most money won 91% of the races. So in the words of the esteemed political philosopher Cyndi Lauper, money changes everything. As Ralph Nader has reminded us, if the Democrats and Republicans were corporations, they would be sued and convicted of antitrust violations. For me, the two-party system is sort of like buying a ticket on a commercial airline.